Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the GitOps Happy Hour. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV. I am joined by the one and only GitOps Extraordinaire, Christian Hernandez. How you doing today, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing good, doing good. It's been a long year so far. And
No
we're
shit.
and
Sorry.
we're only a few weeks in. Or it feels like a few weeks. It's actually only the second week,
Yeah.
but I mean, I'm doing well, Everything. Hope everyone else is doing well out there. You're staying safe. And yeah. So before before we get started, I actually do want to do a quick shout out, right? So I think, and I think I kind of want to do more of these, right? Kind of just give a general a view of GitOps land, right? So
Mhm.
a few of my couple of my colleagues are doing a talk, right? So they're doing a joint talk, Red Hat and GitLab. GitLab's one of our partners, right? So we do a lot of work with them at Worldwide Technologies. They're actually going to do a
Oh,
kind of
okay.
DevOps, kind of doing a DevOps, GitOps talk there. I'll put the link in the chat
Thank you.
there. It's on, so if you want to go there, if you're, interested in learning more about GitOps with GitLab using Red Hat Technologies, it's going to be on Tuesday, the 26th, right? So not next week, but the week after, I believe.
Yep.
Um,
It's
and
2
you can
p.m.
get,
Eastern. Hey, I
yeah,
got an opening in my calendar. I might go.
yeah. See, there you go. Yeah. So that's, yeah, I do too. So it's kind of like, hey, it'd be a good thing to check out there. So yeah. So today, I kind of want to talk about, um, you know, originally or past episodes, I kind of talk about GitOps in general, right?
Mhm.
Today, I'm going to talk about Argo specifically because there are some tools and some features of ArgoCD um, that I think are very helpful, especially when trying to kind of get some of your brownfield applications to GitOpsable, right? So I'll turn GitOps from a
Get
noun to a
opsible.
verb. GitOpsable, right? So I'll be talking about. So let me share my screen real quick here. I don't want to inundate anyone with slides here, but where did my button go? There we go. I changed my setup, so like now
Oh, yeah, that's gonna take some getting used to. Trust
yeah,
me.
it gets used to. Yeah, I think it'll be better, right, in the long run. But like my muscle memory now is a little off. So here we
Yeah,
go.
when I moved my office into this room, I flipped two screens, and it was like, "Whoa, this is super awkward."
Yeah, exactly.
But now I'm used to it. So
Yeah, so so let me. Do you see my presentation, my slides
yeah,
here?
and I'm gonna share the link to the slides right now in chat for
Yeah,
everybody.
so the slides are available. So go. So feel free to take a look at that afterwards, if you want a copy of those. So I'm going to talk about things like um, Syncwaves and hooks, right? So Syncwaves and hooks. So this is what I like to call controlling non-declarative things declaratively, right? So not
Hmm.
everything in not every application, not every um, infrastructure stack can be described declaratively, right? That's just the nature of the beast, right? That's whether it's through just kind of like any number of Snowflake applications that you may have, or the fact that you're used to doing like waterfall or some other process, and you're trying to go through the 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 tribulations of getting this in a Kubernetes environment. There's just instances where you need to deploy something that you just can't do it in a declarative way, right? And I call it, you see in the slide there, getopsing the ungetopsable. So um so
Through sheer will and force, yes.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we're talking about square peg round hole in this episode, so sort of thing, right? So and just kind of just some of the things that um uh, that are difficult to do in a declarative way, right? So like when a deployment of your application needs to do some sort of either scaffolding or some sort of process in order to get up and running, right? Like so like when you first deploy an application, you want to make sure your database tables, like you want to either you're doing a schema change or you're creating tables, or you're doing something with a database, you want to like do a backup or something. That's just one thing, right? And really, how do you do that declaratively? You need to create directory structures, right? Health checks to other systems,
Mm-hmm.
or any other custom scripts, right? Like there are, I did a talk once at DevConf. By the way, DevConf also now virtual. We're just talking about virtual
Yeah.
sessions, but DevConf now it's virtual. Last time I was at DevConf, it was in Brno, right in Czech Republic. I met a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of great people. I got people walking up to me. I did a GitOps session there, walking up to me. He goes, "Well, I have this process," and they ended up describing this process. I'm like, "Oh my god, people have just like these weird setups with it," and it's like not through the fault of their own, but just kind of just like they get um, tech debt, right? They have some
Oh yeah.
they inherited some systems like. Or like they have a system that it's like, hey, it's always been there, it's always been humming, running. We don't want to get off of it, or we can't get off of it. So that's just kind of some of the things that are that just happen, right? You just have a deployment process,
Right.
or you have like a maintenance, right? You need to do like database backup, log rotating. You need to do some sort of maintenance, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like just something, you have to make sure you're splitting the plates in the right directions, and making sure you do the sacrifices just right in order to get your application deployed right.
Right.
So in general, you want to use as much Kubernetes primitives as possible, right? It's like, especially if you're moving over to like a cloud native a way of deploying applications, if you're looking into GitOps to accelerate that process. There are things like init containers, right? So init containers, if you guys don't know, a pod is a representation of one or many containers, right? So a pod in itself can have one or hundreds of containers, right? It just depends.
Yeah.
It's an atomic unit, right? And part of those containers is there's something called an init container that runs before your actual container runs, right? So it's something that runs in a pod that does something and then goes away before your actual container runs, right? So example, if there's a directory structure that needs to be created right before, or you need to download something that needs to be local, whatever, right? You can use an init container for that, for your application. So other than that, there's jobs, right? So jobs are kind of like a batch process, right? So jobs is essentially a separate pod. So now we're talking, we go from in pod maintenance or setup to outside a pod. There's like a separate pod that runs, that does something, right? That connects to an external system, that does some garbage collection. Maybe it'll mount a file system and does a backup, whatever, right? And then there's
It's
also
funny.
operators, right? What's that?
I'm sorry. It's funny because we had one of my first jobs out of the Air Force in tech. We had this entire fleet of servers for quote batch processing, and it's literally just like a Kubernetes object now. It's just funny to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well,
How
like
technology advances. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a farm to do batch processing, right? And now it's just an object that comes and goes away, and you're like, whoa, how far we've come. Yeah, that's like that T-shirt. I'll replace you with a small shell script. This is essentially it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and then the operators, right? So like if I think Golang operators are great, right? There's if you want to pull all the levers, they're there.
Yep.
I think Ansible operators, though, in terms of like maintenance or whatever you need to do, I think it's perfect for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, especially if you're already using Ansible, it just makes sense,
right?
Put it in an operator and just off you go. So I think Ansible operators also is another way to do this, right? You can have an operator that spins up and does some Ansible process, whatever you want to do. That does that, right? So so in general, you want to use some of these primitives, right, to go along, right? So, but ArgoCD has also tool sets, right? So I say ArgoCD to the rescue, right? It's not just ArgoCD, right? Like a lot of sync tools have this here, but we're talking about Argo here, specifically in this use case, right? So ArgoCD does the sync operation, right? So like if you've seen past episodes or if you used Argo before, when you click sync, it seems like magic, right? or it seems pretty simple, but actually in the background, it does the sync in things that they call phases, right? So these phases also have hooks, right? So so let's just kind of break this down a little bit. So there's this 3 basic phases, right? So there's the so if you take this little thought experiment, it's like you have a YAML, right? So you have something simple, pod service route, right? So kind of, or deployment service route. So something dead simple, right? That's what you want to sync.
Right.
There's a pre-sync phase, right? So pre-sync phase is stuff that happens before those 3 YAML manifests gets applied. So things, it could be any Kubernetes resource, but 9 times out of 10, it's usually like a job, right? That does something, right? So you can have pre-sync. So before you sync my manifest, do these steps, right? And then there is the sync phase, which is what you would normally see in Argo is you're taking the manifest and applying it, right? So you're making sure they're in sync. What you have in Git is in sync with what you have in on your cluster. So, and then there's the post sync, right? So the post sync, as the name implies, syncs after your sync process has happened, right? So this and all these processes, processes, people pronounce it different, I guess. Processes, wait for the other one to finish successfully before the other one. So like pre-sync happens, waits for everything to go healthy, then sync happens, waits for everything goes healthy, and then once everything is healthy, the post sync runs, right? And then your application will report, okay, everything ran just fine, right? So some of the sample use cases, right? So like the pre-sync function can perform things like a database schema migration, right? Or before deploying a new version of your application, you have something that happens before that your application does like a deployment of a new version, right? So the sync hook, can be used. That hook say, okay, well, once the pre-sync happens, I need something to happen that's kind of more sophisticated than the rolling update strategy, right? Because the way Kubernetes deploys your application, and by extension OpenShift, is that it'll spin up the new pod, add it to the services endpoint, and then it will just delete the other pod, right? So kind of like a rolling update. And some applications just require something a little bit more sophisticated than that. So so it's just not all applications are just plain and simple, right? So
if they were,
we wouldn't need these tools. Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly.
So the post sync hook can be used to run like integration tests or just kind of check the overall health of your deployment, right? So so part of hooks, right? So if you are running things in hooks, you can delete them, right? So like if you have a job that does like one task that needs to come up, run a task, and then go away, you don't want it lingering, you can delete that job, right? So for instance, if you send like a Slack hook, right, or Slack message after saying, hey, after this hook succeeded, just delete it, I don't need it hanging around. You can also
out of here.
Get it out of here. You could also have if something failed, right? So if something failed, maybe you do want to get notified, right? So if something failed, you could have a job, spin up and notify you, and then delete it, right? So and then there's something else called before hook creation, right? So it'll delete the previous one. So that maybe you do want it hanging around, right? You want a job hanging around so you can look at the logs, but you want it deleted when the new one runs, right? So that's another before hook creation. So that's kind of the idea behind sync, right? Sync phases and hooks, right? So there's another mechanism, right? Is what we call Syncwaves, right? So Syncwaves, along with the sync hooks, the waves is just put it simply, the order in which manifest gets applied within that phase, right? So it's ordered by number, right? So like in your pre-sync, if you have if you have 3 jobs, you can have 0 run, and then when that's finished, then number 1 runs, and then when that finished, number 2 runs. So it's kind of essentially it's an order of operations, right? And each wave is within each phase, right? So if I go back, so you can have a pre-sync, right, that has 0, 1, 2, a sync that has 0, 1, 2, and a post-sync has 0, 1, 2, and it'll run in that order, right? So if without specifying, the default value is 0, meaning that if you don't specify it at all, everything gets applied at the same time, right? So which you may not want, right? So for example, if I am deploying, a front-end web and a database, I want the database up even before the web gets spun up, right? So if I have an application that I haven't written that wait, because some application you can write to where it'll wait until the database is up before it'll come up. This is a way to actually make sure the manifest gets applied in the order that you want, right? So you want database to come up, and then the front end database maybe manifest have a value of 0, and then the front end has a value of 1, right? So then,
right,
and then your job has a value of 2, right? So like you can have it run in that order. You can also have negative, right? So like if you want something, like if you deployed something that's 0, 1, 2, and then you need to deploy something else, you're like, oh crap, this actually needs to run before 0.
Cool.
You can set it to -1. Yeah.
So it's only it's like a wait at that point, right? Like just
yeah.
So go -3, and you give yourself room to put in 1 and 2 if you need to, right? Like
1 and 2, yeah, exactly, yeah. Or -10, right, or whatever. So there's a lot of ways to say this. Yeah, some people do it like 10 base, right?
Yeah, I would do a 10 base thing, right? Like that's actually, what do I do that is like that? I forget, but yeah, there is something that I do a very 10 base. No, it's the menuing systems on all my websites. It's very much like 10, 20, 30. That way, if I need to squeeze something in the middle.
You're planning, right? So that way you don't have to shuffle things. You can just stick it in where you need to. So it's just an integer, right? So it's whatever makes sense to you. So that's another way to do it, right? So question is, how does this work, right? So like if you're watching this, it's like, okay, so how all right, so how do I put this together? So so first, when Argo starts a sync, it orders the resources in a particular way, right? So first it'll order them by phase, right? So it'll take all your manifests and it'll look at it. Okay, I'm going to put all the pre-syncs in one batch. I'm going to put all the syncs in another batch, and I'm going to put the post-sync in another batch, right? So once it does that, so it'll sort them that way. And then within each phase, it'll sort them by the wave that they're in, right? So it'll start from the lowest number, and then it'll apply it going to the highest number in the pre-sync, and then it'll do that for the sync. And then, so that's how it'll order the YAML. And then it'll order it by kind, right? So this is a byproduct of using customize. It'll put the namespace first, and then, the namespace and service and deployment, or I forget the actual one, but I know they do the namespace first. And then by name, right? So then it'll do an alphabetical sorting of the things, right? So even before it even starts the sync process, it has to order them. And this is like the process it uses to order those manifests. And then Argo determines which number of the next wave to apply, right? So it'll do the phase, it'll look at the wave, and it'll say, okay, I'll apply 0, 1, 2, 3, right? It'll apply it only to anything that it notes that it's out of sync or unhealthy,
out of sync, right?
Yeah. So it doesn't like reapply things. It just only applies what it sees that is out of sync. So,
right.
And then it'll apply those resources, right? So it'll check to see what's out of sync, and it'll apply to those resources. And then it basically repeats this until everything's healthy, right? So, so important thing to note is that since your application can be healthy at any point in your wave, since it waits for the health to report 100% healthy, if it fails at a certain wave, it may be your applications will never get to healthy, right? So
Right.
you want to make sure that when you're writing a job, that you're writing the logic right in the job, because the job could be anything, right? It could be an enhanceable playbook, it could be a script, right? You're writing the logic to where if you don't care if it fails, you may want to make it report healthy even though it failed, right? So just note that any phase, it could, if it fails at any point, it'll mark
Yeah,
your
if
application
if
as
like a
healthy.
failure is acceptable, you still want to set that exit code to 0 kind of deal, right? Like,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah.
So it's like clean up the directory and like an error comes back because the directory is empty.
Mhm.
That's probably okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
there's nothing here. I can't do anything. No, just keep going.
yeah, just keep going. So you kind of want to just keep that in mind, that within all these phases, you just want to make sure you want to report healthy when, because sometimes, errors are okay. So,
Yeah.
and you need to program that in, right? So Argo assumes you know what you're doing. So that's the good and bad, right? So
Argo assumes you're smart. Ooh, Argo.
Yeah, Argo assumes you're smart. Boo, Argo. So people saying, yeah, how does this work? But no, but really, can you walk me through it? Because for me,
Yeah.
I'm the type of person that's we can talk about it for hours, but can you just walk me through it, right? So
Same
we'll go through a simple, so we'll go through a simple use case, right? So so this arrow going from left to right depicts the passage of time, right?
Mhm.
So and in each phase, this is how the phases happen, right? So you get the pre-sync, sync, and post-sync, right? So let's just take a simple use case, and let's say you have a job, right? So
Mhm.
this job manifest runs in your pre-sync, and you'll see in the demo, right? Well, I'll walk you through kind of an example that I have. You'll see that each hook has an anchor notation to it, so it's a hook instead of an actual manifest you want to apply. So that's how it differentiates, right? So first phase happens, you apply the job, little hook comes up, and then it'll report green, right? Okay, so that succeeds.
Mhm.
So once pre-sync happens, then the actual sync happens, right? So I want to have a deployment, a service, and a route. And then maybe I have a in this sync in the sync phase, and also in the sync phase I have a hook that runs a job, right? So so I have here a wave, right? So the sync wave here is 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So it basically orders them this way, right? So what ends up happening is that first the deployment runs, and that turns green, and then the service gets applied, and that turns green, right? So as you can see, and then that number 2 comes along, right? So since service turned green, now the route turns green, and then finally, since I have my job set at 3, it runs that last, right? So if I back up a little bit, you'll see that it'll apply it in that order, right? Since this job I didn't annotate it with anything, it'll stick around after the sync finished.
Okay.
So after the sync finishes, now we have the post sync, right? This post sync, I have a job that does something, right? And I have it
Clean
annotated.
up, whatever.
Yeah. Clean up. Maybe send a Slack message, which is kind of like the demo
yeah.
I have set up. Yeah. I have a Slack message. Or whatever, right? Whatever you want. They're just, in the end, they're just,
log to Splunk, right? Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Or touch a file, whatever you want, right?
Yeah. Could be anything.
Could be anything you want. This particular job has a hook, but it also has an annotation called delete on success, meaning when I run, I want it to run, do something, and then delete itself, right? So it'll then run successfully, and at the end, it'll delete itself, right? So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. This is how Argo applies its manifest, right? And you can see how this works, right? So I do have some hacking to do. So right before we get to
some hackery,
right? Or keyboard time, or as I like to say, hacking away until it works, right? I don't see I ever seen those O'Reilly books, those fake O'Reilly books that people make.
Oh yeah, I've got a good one.
Yeah, yeah. They're
Hang
like,
on.
yeah. There's a few of them. There's one, my favorite one. I like two of them. One of them says "Trying Things Until It Works" by
Yep.
O'Reilly, or copying pasting from Stack Overflow. That's another one I
Yes.
really like.
Yes, that's a great one. Let me I'll get mine shared out and I'll share the link in a second here.
Yeah, it's pretty which is funny because we've all done those things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially the copy and paste. It's like copy paste, change the parameters. Oh, it does work. Okay, cool.
Right.
So I do have a quick example, but before we get to that example here, there was kind of like a lively conversation, right? So is as I've said before, there is like the Argo user groups. Within Red Hat, right, we have like a little what I like to call the Argonauts.
Mm-hmm.
That we kind of had a lively conversation. Is like, shouldn't some of this stuff happen in CI and not in CD, right?
Ooh, good point.
So stuff like pre-sync, like you know, or like a sync process or a post-sync process. It was really more the pre-sync, right? So like if I have a job that does a database backup or database maintenance, shouldn't that happen in CI? So that's a very interesting conversation. I'd be interested in like what other users have. Feel free to either chat it up or hit me up on Twitter. Talk about the experiences, right? I think there's a case to be made to have things done in CI versus CD, right? Because remember,
Right.
ArgoCD is a CD process, is a delivery tool.
Uh-huh.
Stuff like maintenance and things kind of almost seems like a CI process. So still, you can do a lot of things. I am of the opinion that if you're doing maintenance, you might want to put like an under construction page up or something, or
Ooh, yeah, like some kind of status.
yeah, some kind of status or like a banner or something.
Mm-hmm.
The argument was made because it's DevOps, right? And I think it's a good argument. It's like, shouldn't the application tolerate maintenance windows, right?
Right.
So that's also a very valid good point. It's just like I said, sometimes you just inherit things and
Yeah.
you have to do it the dumb way, right? So like, I mean, I've been there before. I've been an admin. I know, Chris, you've been there before. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes you inherit and it's like people walk in and go, this is dumb. And I go, yes, it is, but we have tech debt. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I agree with you, but we have to do it this way.
Yeah,
so
and that very much has to do with the fake O'Reilly cover I sent. So
yeah, that's really funny. I've said that many times in my career.
Mess I just walked into.
Yeah. What is this pile I just run into? So if you guys have opinions, yeah, feel free to reach out, put in the chat. I would love to hear what you guys experience out there in terms of like, where should this happen in the process, right? Especially GitOps is so like, we're still in that an exploring phase with GitOps that I'd be interested in where we end up in terms of where should some of these things happen. So cool. So I have here, let's get some hacking going on here. So I have this application, right? So like, I always use a sample application. It's one of those things. What about you, Chris? Like, you wrote once a long time ago and you can just use the crap
You're
out
just
of
familiar with it and you just go with it.
Yeah. So simple CRUD application, but I think it illustrates the point here. So I have an application here. It's a simple CRUD application, right? I have some entries in the database. Right. It's a functioning app, right? Like, they even have the Chris Short t-shirt, right? So get it while you still can.
It's a hot item.
Yeah, like iPad, cool tablet, $15 or 140 or whatever, right? Right. So I can use this application here. So I have this app synced with Argo, right? Right. So this is all synced. This is all up and running. it's just funny how many objects it takes to have a simple application. I always look at this as like, wow, it takes a lot to have only a 2-tier application, but there we go.
Well, it's not just a 2-tier application, right? Like it's a 2-tier application that's highly available and redundant, and it's got all the bells and whistles of running on Kubernetes, right? Like that's the thing that makes it complex, right?
Well, and also I think it illustrates the point of the power of Kubernetes, right? Because I with 2 manifests, I declaratively say, it sets up the networking for me. It sets up the ports for me. It sets up the DNS for me. It sets up the URL, and with 2 manifests, like I get everything, right?
Every little detail is just nailed in those 2 manifests. Absolutely, 100% right on that one.
Yeah. So cool. So I have this application, right? So then I have again here I'm using Octatree. Pretty cool.
Finally.
Yeah. I can't believe it's one of those tools. It's like I can't believe I lived my life the way I did up until now.
Right.
Without this tool. So I have this application, this customization file, right? So I have my resources synced up, right? So I'm actually pulling in the manifests, the actual application from another repo. So that's another cool thing from Kustomize. I can pull the manifests from wherever I want, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just take an application I already have. But there's a few things that happen, right? So I have a pre-sync job, right? So if I look at that pre-sync job, you'll note that here, line 10, I have, here to start at 8, right? So I have post-sync, right? This is a post-sync. Where's my pre-sync? Pre-sync, sorry.
Yeah, so my alphabetical order, not the right order.
Not the right order. Yeah, exactly. So I have pre-sync, right? So this job is going to happen to pre-sync, right? It's the first thing that's going to happen in this wave because I set it to 0. And it's going to delete itself once it's succeeded, right? And what it's doing, it's just a maintenance script, right? So part of the maintenance script is like I'm going to throw up a banner saying that this application is going to come under maintenance, right? So so that's just one, right? So then the next thing that happens is that I have a DB backup, right? So that's my database backup happens in the pre-sync phase in wave 1, right? So it'll happen after the maintenance script fires. That'll finish. It'll run this one. And then after it's done, it'll delete, right? So this deletion policy is hook succeeded. Once it succeeds, get rid of it. I don't want it hanging around. And then finally, in the last thing in the pre-sync, since it's number 2, it'll happen third, is a log rotating, right? So I have a script that'll rotate the logs for me. And then again, hook succeeded, it'll delete, right? So that's the pre-sync phase. Now in the sync phase, I have, go back to my customization, I have this application, right? So it'll pull in all the manifests from this repo, right? And if you look in this repo, if it exists, one second. I hope it exists. There we go.
There you go.
There it is. So if I look at here, this application actually has a Syncwave applied to it, right? So it'll actually deploy it in the order of, I think first the DB service. No, actually the quota gets deployed first. No, I'm dumb. Obviously the namespace needs to be that's first, then the quota, right? Because namespace always has to go first. But I have this application itself in another repo has the Syncwaves, right? So so you need to take that into account, right? So this is kind of like like one of those Russian dolls, right? Like I have a repo within a repo within a repo, right? That reflects those things. So you kind of need to, like, in your brain map it out in your head, but
right. I to be fair and blunt and honest, oftentimes when I'm trying to understand what I'm doing, like I have to draw it out still.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I have this little like tiny little whiteboard with tons of stuff sitting on top of it, just right here at my desk, because it's like, wait a minute, how's this gonna work again?
Yeah. Well, what someone I know, someone actually, one of the kind of not too much of a side note, right? Like I work on this project, Chris, called Helper Node, right?
Right.
And we're in the process of rewriting it in Golang. And one of the guys, we have biweekly sync calls about it. One of the guys actually has a whiteboard in his office at home. His home office has a whiteboard, and
no, my office downstairs, the old one had a whiteboard in it.
Yeah, he needs to like, sometimes he'll need to like get up and like he'll like draw it out what he's trying to say. So I totally get it.
My finished office will have like the desk will be on wheels. It'll be hardwood floors. I'll spin the desk around and I'll be writing on the whiteboard during shows. Right, like it'll be awesome.
Yeah. Well, what we need, I know we discussed this before, is we need the light board. Remember I think there's one in the Boston
very
office.
Expensive, kind of hard to use.
Yeah.
Maybe overkill, but I would like to have one if they're free.
Yeah. Yeah, if anyone wants to send Chris one, feel free to the line there.
My house will suddenly become a studio for lightboard users across Southeast Michigan.
There you go. The little side business there. So I'm pulling this in, and this repo has its own Syncwaves, so that'll, and you'll see the example. It'll get deployed in such a way. If I look at where is my posting? So then I have a posting job, right? So posting job, it runs post sync 0. There's nothing else running it, so I could have probably left that out, and it'll delete and hook succeeded. And this post job, all it does is it'll send us a Slack webhook, right, telling the deployment's done, right? And I have a secret there. And actually, if you want to take a look at the secret, you can. Where's my secret? I wish I would have named these consistently here. Hold on.
You still can.
I guess I still can, right?
Right.
Where is it? There it is. It's actually a sealed secret, so I'm kind of using because I don't want random people posting to the Red Hat Slack.
What? Really?
Yeah. So I'm using multiple technologies. So by the way, so I do dog food a lot here. So but it does send a Slack hook right here. So so it'll happen in this order, right? So let's fire this off here. Is there any way to move this? I know you don't see it in your screen. You know the Zoom,
the bar.
Yeah, I don't want to accidentally close it.
Click the green part, and you can like drag it left or right. I feel like.
Oh yeah, you can. Oh man, this is a game changer.
There you go.
Oh, perfect, cool. Although now this thing. Okay, there we go. All right, let's fire this off. So let's click sync here. I'm gonna sync everything. So fair warning, since I'm doing like maintenance and stuff like that, this is going to be a lot of watching paint dry. But you'll see here that there's a pre-sync that fires off. Right, so you see the little, I don't know if you can see it. Let me know if you need it to get bigger, but there's
I would just say yes, people needed to see it.
So there's a little anchor that denotes that it's a hook, right? So right now it's in the pre-sync phase, and it's launching this pod that's doing that maintenance script, right? So part of that maintenance script, as you see here, it launches a pod here, and it'll put this under maintenance mode, right? So I have this under construction page, right? So
it's like the worst thing for SEO, by the way. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So like I have this under, exactly. My app is not working right now because it's under maintenance mode, right? So then here, this little hook here, it does a database backup, right? So as that's running, my application is
Down.
under construction.
Makes
right?
sense. Makes total sense.
Makes total sense, right? You don't want people
You know,
writing tables and
writing to something that's unwritable, bad. Yeah. How would you solve that in a more production environment, though? Would you have like some kind of proxy or cache just to like
I
hold
would,
on to things? Yeah, that's tough.
or
Highly redundant
that's tough.
databases are a thing. Yeah.
The database is always a problem, right?
Right. Well, state is always a problem, right?
State's always a problem, yeah. So Christian Poster, right? He wrote a microservices book, and he does microservices talk, and he always says the issue always comes down to your state. That's going to be your biggest problem, right? So
data gravity, all those, it's there are terms there for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So once now I have a post sync here. This post sync is actually, if I go here, it'll I have this little channel here that I created for you and me, Chris. You're a part of it. See, so now you see here that it just came up. Deployment was successful, right? So it was just I actually do have you added.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Nice.
It says you're on. I don't know.
No, I am in it. I see it now. Yeah,
that's you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just got a Slack message. Yeah. So you just got a Slack message that the deployment was successful, right? So at the end, I send a Slack message, and then they go away, as you see here in Argo. The jobs not only came, but they left, right? So if I actually drop down here, if I do OC get pods under price list, right? None of the pods lingered, right? Except the post deploy, because the post deploy, I have it set to, I don't have it annotated, right? So let's look at back. Let's go to GitOps examples, go to price list, and then where's post deploy? Yeah, post deploy, I just have it as Syncwaves, but I don't have it deleted, right? So that's the only one that sticks around. If I do OC get jobs, there's only one job instead of the 3 or 4 that I deployed there. So so that's
Red Hat uses Slack. Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
We use a lot of tools for communication. Actually,
we use a lot of tools. Yeah, there's this. Usually for companies that've been around for a while, there's not very rarely you end up using only one tool. So
right.
So and in Red Hat, that's very, very true. So IBM also uses Slack, right? They have the little they had made that big Slack deal. We still can't talk to each other, but there we go. What's really cool is you can invite other Slack channels in specific channels, right? So I know the Ansible Slack.
Yep.
So Ansible has, they have their own Slack. Oh yes, us OpenShift.
They had their own Slack before they were owned by Red Hat. Yeah.
Well, and also the core OS Slack, right? So our OpenShift Slack, the one we're on, we have our own account. So it's so don't act so surprised. You'll be more surprised finding out how actually we have it set up.
Any Matrix usage then? Oh yeah, totally plug in.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why my neck hurts all the time.
Yeah, that's what these slots are.
It's for your razors. No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for your razors. Yeah, exactly. So I have so yes, as you can see, some of the you can use like Syncwaves and phases to do a lot of things. I actually use it for a little bit more complex setup. So if I go to what is this here? Cluster config. Yeah, so I actually use so here, let me go here, manifest. There we go. So deploying the EFK stack actually gets kind of complex, right? So I actually have, a Synkwave. So, kind of airing a little bit of dirty laundry in terms of operators. So the operator lifecycle management
Hmm.
isn't. Um, it's one of those cases where it's not GitOps friendly, and it's not a knock on OLM. A lot of things aren't GitOps friendly, right? So
Oh
this is
yeah,
this,
I mean
which is
that's
which
a
which is
given.
the reason, yeah, which is a reason why there's Syncwaves, right? It's not just because GitOps is so new, like it's obviously not friendly. Um, I was running into an issue where I am trying to deploy our logging stack. And for those of you who haven't deployed our logging stack is actually a meta operator. It's an operator that launches 3 other operators, right? And so I got into this kind of limbo where it was trying to apply a manifest for a CRD that doesn't exist yet, right? So just because you create the CRD, it takes a while for the cluster to um, see that CRD, right? And if
Right.
the CRD and the CR get applied at the same time, you'll get an error. And that's just in general, just in Kubernetes in general. Um, and so I basically came up, and this is another shout out to the Canadians, right? They gave me this idea
Hmm.
where basically I'm doing an OC wait, right, for the CRD to exist, essentially, right? So I wait for this CRD to be established. And that's all this job is doing, right? So before, I'm doing this in step 6. So before step 7, I need to wait. I need to wait
Right.
until that resource exists, right? So even in Kubernetes, you run into race conditions, right? Um, so I'm basically saying until um, this CRD exists, I'm just gonna wait, right? And then I'll sleep,
Hmm.
seconds or whatever, and I just keep just still waiting. And then when it's done, cool, it's done. This job goes away. Well, it doesn't go away 6 rounds, so I can see the logs, but 6 runs and then 7 will run, right? Which 7? I think it's this. Yes. So then I can create my CR, right? So this step 6 waits for the CRD to get defined in a job. Step 7 says, okay, now create the custom resource against this, create the operand, right, from this operator. Um, and so, and I used to have this, because, so this here's another cool option. This is a sync option, some of the little known sync options, right? So since we're talking about Syncwaves, um, uh, Argo does a kind of sanity check. Well, Argo slash customize kind of does a sanity check before it tries to apply something, right? So if you
Right.
try to apply kind cluster logging and cluster logging doesn't exist, it'll error out. It won't even try to apply it, right?
Right.
So I say, hey, when you do your dry run, skip dry run on missing resource. When you do dry run, kind of just skip, kind of ignore this. So you're kind of telling it, I kind of know what I'm doing. Ignore it for now
Right.
because I'm going to fix it later, right? I'll fix it. Like they say, I'll fix it in post production. I'll fix it with Syncwaves, right? I'll write a job for it. So that's another thing you need to look out for is Argo does kind of like a dry run of everything before it does something. And you can actually, with this annotation, you can, let me make this a little bigger. With this annotation here, you can tell it to skip that on dry run. So just took another tip, tricks from the road, right? Kind of some things that you can do, especially if you're, I think Kubernetes in general is going to move into a CRD centric, right? Like, I saw
Oh
this
yeah.
KubeCon talk given by I forget the name of the gentleman. He's from Google. He says, I want everything to be a CRD, like pods. Like I
Right.
don't even want pods in tree, like for for the
Right.
Kubernetes
Like,
code. Like,
yeah, everything needs to be controlled somehow, right? Like,
yeah.
exactly.
So I want that to be a CRD, and I like that's I think that's very interesting. At that point, Kubernetes just becomes an API, like an object management kind of tool. I don't know. Kubernetes kind of just then will like evolve into who knows what, right? Like you just have Kubernetes and you have a bunch of CRDs that maybe don't even manage pods. It's just going to be, so that'll be interesting to have that unfold here. So, so cool. So, last 10 minutes here. I don't have anything else. I don't know if there's been, I know you've been,
we're talking about, Matrix is a replacement for IRC, not actually the Matrix, the movie kind of thing. So this is news to me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I'm looking at, I guess the Fedora community is trying to move over to a Matrix-based tool, and it looks like it's called Element. So yeah, I'll have to check this out.
That reminds me of this.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
no matter no matter what you have, you'll have this one person say, "Look, I just have my IRC set up the way I like it. Right, I'm not going to move off of it." There's just yeah. Well, yeah. Look, you did put it in chat. So sorry I missed that, but you did. You said, "Where's that XKCD?" Okay. So I'll put that in chat so like these other guys can laugh at it. But
yeah, it's just like, and it never fails, right? Like your communication systems will never go away unless you have an intentional design behind it from the get-go that it's replaceable, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah,
everything needs to be thought of and built in a way that it can be replaced, right? Like that's the way of the future, because the thing you're running right now is not going to be the thing you're running 5 years from now, right?
Correct.
Like, it needs to be composable and constructible in ways that are well, and pluggable, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny how we I like this. My Git commit, shout out to the Canadian guys. My Git commit is Gerald's always right. So that's kind of like an inside joke. Gerald's an architect in our Canada team, and we have this inside joke that we say, "Well, what does Gerald think?" And like, well, I mean, 9 times out of 10, whatever he says, I go, "Oh yeah, maybe I should have done it that way." So it's kind of like an inside joke. Anyway,
makes sense.
Yeah, so it's just funny how we as engineers, we as architects, we're always trying to push like our client base, like we're trying to push them forward, like try the new and better thing, but yet we stick to IRC. So it's just kind of weird. It's kind of weird, like, no, like, I'm holding on to this IRC. I mean, I do it too. Like I've been trying to use VS Code, but like I just have Vim set up so like just the way I like it.
You could do the same, like literally the Vim plugin for VS Code should give you most of the functionality you need.
Yeah,
right?
I've been trying. Like I've been actually trying.
Like I had to do the same thing, and I haven't like looked back since making the conversion. And now I'm trying to use more of the plugins and extensions that we make, like the server connector, right? Like you never leave your IDE. Like the OpenShift connector, you never leave your IDE, and you can do things on your cluster. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is really nice, and the VS Code does have some of these plugins where it's like, oh, that's neat. So I've been trying to use it, right? Like I've been a Vim guy like most of my career, and I have all these plugins. Like you have all the Vim plugins and everything, and it's just like. And but like I've been making a conscious effort to try to make these VS Code as much as possible. So
yeah, I mean, do your best. That's all you can ask
do your
for,
best.
right?
That's all you can ask for. So just some of the things, because I use buffers in Vim. Like I'm probably like a few people, right? Like I have a buffer. I loaded it in memory. I can jump into another file, open that buffer. Like some of those things just it's hard to replicate, right, with the plugins, right, with the VS Code plugins. Like I found workarounds, and they do. Plugins mostly work, but so there's my. So I'm even guilty. So my only point is I'm even guilty of like holding on to technologies, right, like IRC. So
well, could you give some more use cases for pre-sync and post-sync type jobs?
So
like cleanup is the easy one for post-sync, right? Like I've deployed a bunch of artifacts, I want to get rid of them, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think some of the use cases that I thought of are the ones that I presented, right? So like cleanup, um, um, tagging certain images. Um, I'm trying to think of doing something with storage. I would imagine doing some storage cleanup or like mounting some file systems to
Well,
do something.
I could see you take like a backup of the current state of the application just to make sure, right? Before
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
doing a new deployment kind of deal. Like there's all kinds of crazy things you could do pre-hook.
yeah. Especially with Ansible, like with the Ansible
Oh yeah.
operator.
Yeah.
If you're gonna launch like a job or an operator that'll has Ansible, you can do a lot of things.
Yeah. I've got these physical volumes. I want them backed up to S3. Yeah, you could totally do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can and throw up tagging images, right? Like working with images, I think is a lot. You can do a lot with image maintenance, image maintenance on the for your images on a pre-sync phase, right? So like you have like a version. Yeah, database migration is like probably like the
Mm-hmm.
most clear cut. Yeah, so like migrations is probably the most clear cut way of uh, doing this, right? And also, especially if you're using like an external load balancer, you can
Oh
do
yeah.
like blue green sort of
Mm-hmm.
things. I mean, Argo does have a blue. Maybe this is something we can talk about in a future episode with Argo. Yeah, doing blue green with Argo. They have Argo rollouts, right?
Nice.
That do some of this stuff, right? That do some of this blue green for you. Um, but I can see blue green happening also with like a pre-sync phase, right? Like you deploy a new version, right? You connect to your load balancer, you make, or you apply some sort of virtual service rules or something, like if you're using Istio or some sort of service mesh. Um, I can see like trying to do blue green with pre and pro sync, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone says they're using everything is latest for them, and it's like,
yeah,
whoa,
yeah,
so latest, hopefully in your registry, not like
yeah, yeah.
Docker Hub or some other larger public registry, right? Like,
Yeah. So actually, yeah, image management is definitely like tagging images for
mhm,
like production and stuff like that, right? So, um, is like one of the biggest things, right? I can see, right? Because like in development, you'll probably have it tagged as dev,
right,
and then in production, you'll have it tagged as prod. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they differ, but
right.
you want to make sure because that's part of my maintenance. The way I put up the maintenance page, I just tag my my production image. I tag that. I make sure that tag of production matches my under construction tag, right? Because all it is just like a tag, and then it does a deployment. So yeah, if the Helm
Yeah,
chart
like the
defaults
Helm
to
chart.
latest, we're running latest.
Well,
So
there's that. Yeah.
yeah,
If your
that's
automation tools are calling for latest, okay.
well, and that's actually glad you brought up Helm. Helm's an episode I'm going to do in a later show, how to work with Argo, because heretofore we've just been working with static YAML,
Right.
but you can actually use Helm in the background um, for some of this stuff. So there's in some Helm charts you're able to supply which version of the image you want to use. So
That's true.
um,
And, if you're using, I always say like you always need to keep your own version around, right? So that gives you the flexibility to do whatever. But yeah, if you're just gonna
yeah.
pull from a public, Helm repository of some sort, okay,
Mhm.
do you.
Yeah, you do you is exactly.
Whatever works best for y'all, just do that. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's what works best for that organization.
That's definitely true. Yeah. Talking about tech debt, right? So,
Word.
all right, cool. So
All
we
right.
are top of the hour.
Top of the hour. I got to go to a meeting. Good fun stuff.
Yeah, we all have to go meetings. Right?
Yeah, meeting everywhere. So yeah, thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Yep.
Thanks for your engagement in chat. We always enjoy hearing your stories and everything. And we look forward to seeing you next time here on the GitOps Happy Hour.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.